On WMRC now, we have as our guest former state representative, former senator, former sheriff of Worcester County, Guy Godis. Guy is pretty much an expert in running political races and making sure that the people he represents wins those races. Guy, good to talk to you. Good morning.
Hey, Ed. Good morning to you and all you listeners out there.
Thanks very much for joining us this morning. I just want to talk about just what that, issue is regarding people who handle races for candidates. It's a lot of work, and you have to really know the inside working of politics to get your guy, your woman to win, right?
Well, absolutely. And, we just witnessed a very interesting race to watch and follow down in the Worcester and Norfolk district between Senator Dick Moore and Representative Ryan Fatman. It was a really interesting race to follow. Every pundit has a theory on why the incumbent, Richard Moore lost. But, I think it just boils down to a very simplistic but overwhelming fact. Ryan Fatman ran a superior campaign on almost every level. These types of races, Ed, they're really won and lost in the trenches. They're won and lost with door knocking, handshaking, GOTV, direct mailings, phone banking. And if you really break this race down, I think on almost every category, Ryan Fatman ran a superior campaign. So all the pundits are out there trying to figure this out. Sometimes the real answer is right before your eyes. He just ran, I think, a much stronger, better balanced, more technologically sophisticated campaign than the incumbent.
But Senator Moore should have known better. He has been involved in this. I remember him telling me years ago, he would run a campaign as if he had an opponent whether he did or not. And I think he ran better campaigns when he had no opponent.
Well, I think, the senator had a good message. I think his message was good. But, one thing in politics, Ed, and I think it's important is, a lot of the great candidates, they have great instincts, and they know when to run, when to stay, and when to get out. And, it's very hard mounting a campaign when you haven't had a serious opponent in 10, 15, 20 years. You tend to get a little rusty. Your organization falls apart. I always say it's good to have a credible opponent every term or two or three, because it really keeps your organization lubed and prepared and organized. And I think sometimes you can catch incumbents kind of sleeping at the wheel. Dick Moore's been a very accomplished state senator. He's a friend of mine. I like him. But he really put a lot of time and effort into the State House. And that's not a knock. If anything, I think it's a compliment. But when you're in Boston and you're really working on those issues day in and day out, sometimes you can lose grasp of your district. And as Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local, and these types of races are really won, as I said, in the trenches, in the neighborhoods, and town to town.
Should he not have run this time around?
Well, I mean, that's an opinion you'd have to ask the senator. I mean, some people can run and win re-election, and other people can't. I mean, history is always written by those that win, but I think it's a very unfair question to ask. You'd have to ask the senator. But I will say one thing, the bigger question really is for the district. What are the implications of losing a senior member of the state Senate with such tremendous authority and power of that of Dick Moore, and replacing that type of senator with a freshman from the minority party? I mean, that's the bigger issue. Now that the campaign is over, there's some far-reaching implications here.
So it's going to take.
Now, the one advantage I think Ryan Fatman will have becoming a senator is there's now a Republican governor, and I think he'll work very closely with Charlie Baker, and I think that will favor the district. But there's no doubt there's got to be some questions about replacing the Senate President Pro Temp, who really has unbridled power and authority in the state Senate to help with funding and to help with legislation, versus a freshman who's coming in as a member of the minority party.
So it's probably going to take Fatman some time to get some traction.
Well, I think, if I was Ryan Fatman, and, with all due respect, he probably doesn't need my advice, but I would get very close to the governor. I think having an ally in the executive office can help with grants, it can help with press, it can help secure some much-needed money for the district, and I think they'd be very wise to forge a close working relationship with the governor. It's very similar in Worcester. Something happened like this 25 years ago where the incumbent majority leader, Dan Foley, who was really the right-hand man to Billy Bulger, President Bulger at the time, lost to an upstart a young man by the name of John Houston. Didn't work out too well. John Houston only served one term and ended up losing. But I think Ryan Fatman has some advantages. One, he's got a very conservative, Republican-leaning district, and two, he has a new governor coming in. So it's going to be interesting to watch the next couple of months and see how that transition goes.
Representative John Fernandez, an easy victory over his opponent, Mark Reel. That was probably pretty much understood from the word go.
Yeah, and, John, that doesn't come as much of a surprise. Knowing John Fernandez, he's a very hard-working, district-orientated type of state representative. He's not really caught up in the leadership shuffle down in Boston, has more time to spend in the district, and I think that was very evident when you looked at the poll numbers. I mean, he did very, very well, and I think it's really, I think he should be very proud to know he's the only Democratic state representative in South Worcester County today. I mean, when I got elected, Ed, there was only one Republican in the entire South Worcester County, and that was George Peterson, who represented Grafton and Northbridge. Today, it's just the opposite. There's only one Democratic state representative, and that's John Fernandez, with every other rep a Republican. That's a real compliment, I think, to John Fernandez's leadership and I think his constituent services.
John has 2 years, of course, as state representative. Ryan Fatman has 2 years as a state senator. Say John wants to become state senator. Does he go up against Fatman? What kind of race would that be?
Well, again, that's a question you'd have to ask Representative Fernandez. I mean, I think they're both very well respected. I know John has a lot of seniority now moving up in the House of Representatives. I know he fits good with leadership. I think John has a lot of options, not only moving up, but also moving up within the House of Representatives. So it'll be very interesting. But I think the district will be well represented, and I think they'll both work at getting along and being very nonpartisan when it comes to the issues and the constituents of the Worcester and Norfolk Senate District.
John and Senator Richard Moore bitterly complained during the campaign about Mass Fiscal and the Marlboro Group, who was funneling money into Fatman and Mark Reel. What kind of role did Mass Fiscal play in this?
Well, listen, Mass Fiscal played a role, but how significant, I'm not sure. I mean, they put a lot of money in a lot of different Senate seats, and, there was only one incumbent Democratic state senator that was defeated. So I don't know if that was really the difference. I mean, it certainly helped Ryan Fatman, and it always helps when you have outside mailings. But again, these types of races tend to be won and lost in the trenches. They're won and lost with door knocking and direct mail, and they're won and lost, I think, on the candidates themselves. And, whether you supported Ryan Fatman or not, you have to really tip your hat to what I think was a superior campaign run over the last 10 to 12 months.
Were you surprised by any of the results from the ballot questions?
No, I think those ballot questions were out there. There was no real close ballot question. I think, the tax question certainly helped bring a lot of Republicans out to vote. But then again, the casino question helped bring a lot of labor and construction votes out. So I think it was pretty balanced on who was coming out to the polls on Election Day.
And Scott Brown lost up in New Hampshire, even though he's probably better looking than any New Hampshire resident.
Well, if elections were decided on looks, I would have never won it. So sometimes things go beyond looks. They go on substance and policy, and more importantly, campaign ability. And these races, again, are won and lost on campaigning. Now you have the unenviable task of actually leading. The campaign's over, and now people have to produce for their district, and ultimately, I think that's what they're judged on.
What are you doing now for work? You're certainly involved in political campaigns.
Well, I love the political campaigns, but you really can't make a living on political campaigns. I do the legislative agenda work for a lot of public safety agencies. I'm the legislative agent for the Mass Commission state police offices, the correctional offices. They're actually located in Milford over on South Main Street. Yep. I represent the chief probation offices, Smart 911. So goes good to my background as sheriff and former chairman of the Public Safety Committee. I try to do a lot of legislative work regarding public safety constituents, agencies, and associations. So I'm still down in Boston, Ed. I can't get out of it.
Very good. Guy, thank you very much.
All the best to you and your listeners. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much. Our guest this morning, former state representative, former senator, and former sheriff of Worcester County, Guy Godis.